Welcome, Joy, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Man Must Die, your last album, the pain behind it all, and more things relating to the metal world. No? We start with a common question, I think, with the interviews to promote these albums. So why did the band delays 10 years to release the new album?
That's not an easy question. Basically, a lot of the guys in the band, we all have like full-time jobs. We all have families, children, things like that. So real life stuff got in the way of the music for a long time. And just when the lockdown happened and when the pandemic hit with the COVID virus, we were all sitting at home doing nothing. So we figured, why don't we try and write some music?
Okay. So, speaking a little about the history of the band, I clearly remember when I first heard your first album, Start Killing, in 2004. So, and I was very surprised about those years. So, after almost 20 years of this first album, how many things have changed in the band? Do you still have the same expectation to release a new album as you did the first time?
Well, yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, the whole reason that we do this band is because we have a lot of really, really great fans of the band that, that show us a lot of support. So, yeah, I mean, every album that we release, we always want it to do well, and we always want the fans to really enjoy it when we release it. But yeah, it's basically, we just go into it with the intentions of writing the best songs that we can write as a band. We definitely don't try to keep recording the same album over and over again, because we feel that that's very pointless and not very progressive, because we aren't the same people we were 20 years ago. We're totally different people now. So obviously our music reflects that, if that makes any sense.
Mm. Okay. So 10 years is a quite long for a new album. So what do you think has changed with the music of Man Must Die compared to the last record? The piece was never an option, 2013. So can we say that you are now much more mature band and have left behind the fast piece and super technical aspects of the past? Because because the 40 minutes of this new album are calmer compared to the past albums, and I have quite a lot of group and trash inside of this new one. And I think the faster songs in this new album, for me especially, are Click Hate and a little with the Bring Me the Hate of the King. And sometimes in this new album, I hear some influence from Revocation.
Revocation? No, I'm not a fan of Revocation. I don't dislike them. I'm not a fan of their music. I don't really know their music that well. The thrash influence has always been in Man Must Die, because we grew up listening to Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, Sepultura, things like that. So the thrash influence definitely comes from the old school bands, not the new school bands. As for the album, yeah, I mean, it's like I said previously, we're older now. So when we first started, it was all about being really, really fast all the time. That was what we did. But as you know, I mean, you can see it throughout our albums. We always put the song first. It's never about how technical the playing is, because to be honest, we don't really give a fuck about technical metal. That's not why we play music. We play music because we want to write good songs. And that's always been the focus for Man Must Die, I feel. So, I mean, there's definitely really aggressive stuff on the new album. There is a lot of fast stuff on there. But I think as we have went on as a band, we've got better, in my opinion, we have got better at writing songs and not just extremely fast music.
Oh, okay. So talking about the composition process of this new album, did this idea materialize during the pandemic, or was it before? Because many bands and musicians had a lot of time to compose and give many touch of their new productions for 2022, 2023, among you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was during lockdown that we decided to basically start writing new songs for the album. So that was how it came about. It was totally because everyone in the entire world was in at home. So we had all this free time and we decided, let's channel it into something positive, and that's how we got started on writing the new album.
Okay. So talking, one thing you said is that in the first previous answer is that you want to live in the influence. You create the music by on your way. So talking about of this aspect of living influence and feeling what happens internally and externally for the musicians, many musicians say that they don't have a direction, as you said, when writing music and are carried away by the feelings that they have in the moment. So for you, how do the parts of producing an album connect with the idea or sensation of it? Could we say that the music is a concept thinking, or the music is a concept not thinking?
Probably a bit of both. We very much write what we want to hear, and we always have in Man Must Die. We don't really write music to cater to any particular style. Like, we aren't interested in, genres, tech metal, death metal, all these different genres. That doesn't mean anything to us. We are a band in our own way, and we just write the music that we feel collectively, and that's always what comes first. Because if you aren't writing music for yourself, I feel you're writing it for the wrong reasons. So you have to write it for yourself, and then if people like it, that is definitely a bonus. But it has to be for the individual.
Okay. Well, talking about the history of the band, I was looking at his discography, and the releases of these that were handled by Retributed Records for the first album, Relate Record for the next two, and the previous one of this new one, Life Force Records. And now the pain behind it all are with Distortion Music Group. So a new label with a new within the metal world. So what were the reasons for the label changes in the past? And what are the factors now for you to have opted for a new label like Distortion Music Group? Because you are now more than in a band more than 20 years, since you were two Aquitans before this new one. So because you have a great labels before this one, Relapse and Life Force Media.
Yeah. Well, the first album came out on an independent label in the UK. So that basically was the first label that wanted to put Man Must Die's music out. So that's how that came about. Then after the first album, we started doing demos and sending them out to bigger metal record labels like Relapse, E-Rake, things like that. Relapse got in touch with us. They liked what we were doing. We decided it was a good fit. So we decided to sign to Relapse. So we did 2 albums with Relapse. We did The Human Condition and we did No Tolerance for Imperfection. And after that, we were only signed to do 2 albums, and then with the option of doing a third. And at the time, a lot of downloading was really affecting record sales of every band. So there was a little bit of kind of push and pull there. So we decided we didn't want to be on Relapse anymore. It was a mutual decision. We didn't feel that they were doing enough for us in the promotion side of things, and that was how it came about. We decided to part ways. Then we got in contact with Life Force Records, as you were saying. They decided to put out the one album, which was Peace Was Never an Option. We only did 1 album with them. That was all it was supposed to be, just one. And then obviously after that, we had a really, really large gap of 10 years. And the new label is run by Maurizio from the band Cataclysm, and we've been really, really good friends with Cataclysm from way, way back. JF, the guitar player, recorded our first two albums, so we had a really good friendship with those guys. So Maurizio said, he said to me, I hear you're doing a new album. Well, I said, yeah, and he wanted to put it out. So I was like, right, okay, let's go for it then. So that's how that came about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The trait that always seen in the songs and albums of Man Must Die, it is has many titles are related to the death, social aspects, and war, no? But there are also political sides, as in a piece was never an option. It's a great title for a political aspect. So do you think that the political aspect with metal is a tool or concept to continue exploding through the years, no? And what do you think of the fans who take this artistic idea, because this is artistic idea, but these kind of fans take this concept too literally and link down with their concept to left or right leanings?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that we are a political band, because not all of our songs are about politics at all. We do have the songs on every album that it's not so much politics that we are talking about. It's more social stance and where we see people in general and how society works. We don't pick any particular left or right. That's not my interest. Basically, I write all the lyrics in Man Must Die, so all of that comes from me. But yeah, it's politics it's not a massive part of what we do at all. And I think on the new album, there's a lot of introspective stuff, a lot of personal stuff to me. And I've always written about personal stuff on previous albums. I struggle with depression, things like that, anxiety, things like this, things that are affecting me personally, which I feel makes us stand out a lot from other quote unquote death metal bands, because we don't sing about cutting people up or fucking nuclear war and things like that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. So well, and with this theme or with this subject, it is curious. Is that curious that since 70s, the music that comes from Unite or UK with the punk, hardcore, metal, and a lot of styles more always had this inclination for the political and social matters. That's a curious thing. So why do you think the bands from the UK always take this idea as a source of inspiration of the lyrics? What are the biggest social, and relating to this, what are the biggest socials and with the biggest socials or political problems that Man Must Die lives daily as a human beings?
Right. Well, me personally, I grew up listening to a lot of hardcore punk, and when I say hardcore punk, I mean real hardcore punk. I don't mean hardcore now.
Yeah.
So like Discharge, The Exploited, things like that. Minor Threat, obviously that's America, but I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff as well as listening to metal. So personally, that side of Man Must Die's lyrics comes from my influence from the hardcore punk scene. So, but as for talking about why British bands seem to have this as a theme, I don't really know. It's a smaller country. Obviously, it's a bunch of countries. It's Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales. But that is very, very small in comparison to America or South America, where it's so massive. So I think, obviously, coming from such a small place, all these countries are all huddled together in one place. I think it's more obvious what's happening in the government overall, and more focus. It's easier to focus on it because the countries aren't all spread out over vast distances. that's my take on it. But I can't say. But I would definitely say punk has a big influence on the political side of things.
Okay, so as a part of one of the last questions for this interview, do you think the metal in general has a bigger impact on society compared to the 70s and 80s? Because, as you said, England was produced the first wave of new heavy metal. Black Sabbath created heavy metal in general. So, because many people believe in this generation that the appearance of bands like Metallica and Stranger Things or Pantera in the movie Sonic 2, and more examples continue. So, now they think that now metal is massive. So what do you think are the factors to say that that this musical style is now more massive than the 70s and 80s?
I would say it's probably down to the internet and how easily access there is to all different genres of music. Because when I was growing up in the late 80s and the 90s listening to metal, it was still very underground then. You had the big bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Metallica, things like that. But even bands like Slayer and Megadeth weren't, big names then. They were just kind of underneath. They were like the big underground bands, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, I think metal now is far more. How could I say this? It's far more accepted worldwide as a valid musical genre, whereas in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I think it was kind of looked upon as being like as if it was something it wasn't worth bothering about. Whereas I think now it gets the attention that it deserves. And obviously you get bands like Metallica, who are arguably the biggest band in the world, and they're a heavy metal band. So when you've got that amount of exposure, obviously on TV programs, on film, commercials, things like this, metal's everywhere. So it's pushed in people's faces more. Whereas when I got into metal, there was nothing on television with metal on it. Absolutely nothing. So you really had to dig deep if you liked this music. You really had to sort it out and find it yourself.
Okay. Oh, we are very close to this interview, Joe. And for that, what are the future plans that the band has for this new album? Perhaps upcoming on European tours, perhaps a North American tours or American tours, who knows? Or perhaps in this aspect, who knows? Perhaps a Latin American tours in the next couple of years. Who knows?
I would love to play South America. We have a lot of people that message us and have done for a very long time asking us to go and play there, and we would love to. So hopefully when the album comes out, we will do our hardest to get down there and play, because I've heard amazing things about the fans in South America that that absolutely love metal, and it's basically they feel it. So we really want to try and get down there, and obviously play everywhere else that we can as well. But we're looking into some tour ideas at the moment, but obviously I can't say anything just now because nothing is confirmed.
Okay. Oh, one of the last questions. Well, you remember the past and when the technical death metal was created by the bands from the 90s. I'm talking about from Canada, talking about from US. The 90s was the real explosion from this style. But then when the 2000s begin, a lot of bands appear, like you with Start Killing, Necrophages, the Spawn of Possession, Sweden, and a lot of bands more. So what's your opinion about the technical death metal are now more present into the metal scene, because a lot of bands are continue appearing with the sounds of the 90s, on the 2000s, or the beginning of 2000. And one thing, as you can see now, the 5 or 6 years ago, 10 years ago, there's a lot of technical dissonant death metal bands appear with the sound of Gorguts of 1998. So what's your opinion about I think the technical death metal, I think, is overpopulated or saturated now.
Yeah, Absolutely. I feel the same way. I'll be honest, I don't listen to death metal, not new death metal. There's very few new bands that interest me. I still like all the old stuff like Cryptopsy, early Carcass, things like this. But yeah, you can only go so fast. Do you know what I mean? It's like that doesn't interest me. I don't care how fast something is. I don't care how technical it is. It needs to have a song, something, it can be fast and aggressive, but it can still have a song, good riffs, things that will stick in your head. And I feel personally that a lot of the extreme technical bands, it's just boring to me personally. It just bores me. Absolutely. And like you said, there's so many of them all doing the same thing, and I can't tell any of them apart. To me, they all sound exactly the same. So for me, it's pointless to try and compete with that, because we aren't amazing musicians. We are, do you know what I mean? We're decent musicians, but we always just try to write really good songs. And I think that gets lost, especially in the modern technical death metal world. I think people are too obsessed with technique, how many notes you can play. I don't give a fuck about any of that. Some of my favorite music, Black Sabbath, early Black Sabbath, things like this, like early Iron Maiden. It's not technical, but it's great music. And I think that is being overshadowed now with technical ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one thing that you said, one thing that you said is that you don't hear new bands because you are very tired of hear this a lot of technical, etc., etc. But curious thing into this aspect, when I interviewed a lot of people from 40 years old, 45 years old, they always said like you said. So they don't hear new music because they prefer stay stagnated with the old music, Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Slayer, Metal, etc., etc. So
Yeah.
why the musicians from from the second wave of the metal scene around the world are too attached with the old stuff and not the new things?
Because there's good songs on the old stuff. There's good songs. It's not that I don't try to listen to new bands. I do listen to new bands, and I go into it with the best intentions. I want to like it, but it's just riff salad. It's just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I have no interest in that. Most of the newer bands that I listen to are like kind of strange, coming from the sort of avant-garde kind of hardcore scene, like Converge, things like that, Dillinger Escape Plan. I love all that type of stuff, the chaotic hardcore stuff. But as far as like the newer stuff, to me, I try to like it, but it just doesn't seem to be any songs. And for me, it still has to have songs. And another really, really important thing for me is aggression. For me, a lot of the technical stuff, yeah, it's fast, but it doesn't sound aggressive to me. Whereas I think bands like Cryptopsy, Defleshed, things like this, Early Carcass, Napalm Death, those bands, when you listen to that, you can feel you can feel the aggression, and that's how I want to write music. I want to convey emotion, not technicality. So I think, going back to your original question, I think older music has more heart. For me, it has more heart, and less of the blah, 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 technical shit.
Okay. Well, Joe, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoy this one like me. You're a terrific guy. Congratulations on the new albums. It's a great one. So perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect some time to see Menons Die here someday, who knows, and Metalerium followers?
Yeah, I mean, for all the people that contact us, you know, South America, you know, Chile, Peru, you know, places like that, Brazil, you always show Man Must Die a lot of love, and we really, really want to come down there and play for you guys because, like I said, there's a lot of you guys want to see us, so let's try and make it happen.